Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. When you hear the term mob war, what comes to mind? A single epic showdown between two families. The truth is far more complex and brutal. Mob wars weren't just one conflict. They were a series of violent internal power struggles that tore the American Mafia apart from the inside out. From the 1970s to the early 2000s, these wars raged in cities like New York, Chicago, and Philadelphia, all over territory, leadership, and loyalty. This wasn't just a crime story. It was the slow, bloody implosion of an empire that once ruled the shadows of American cities. To understand the wars, you first have to understand the business. The Italian-American Mafia wasn't a street gang. It was a corporation. It had a clear structure, a boss at the top, an underboss as second in command, a consigliere as a trusted advisor, capos leading crews, and soldiers who did the earning and enforcing. Their business wasn't just robbery. They controlled entire systems: construction unions, waste management, gambling, loan sharking, and extortion. What they called protection. They also dipped into drug trafficking, even while publicly denying it. They owned nightclubs, trucking companies, and parts of the garment industry. The key was control. They didn't just take a piece of the pie. They owned the entire bakery. Now here's an uncomfortable question. Did the mob ever actually improve society? It's controversial, but in some neighborhoods, for a short time, they created a certain kind of order. With one authority in charge, random street crime often went down. Businesses ran smoothly as long as you paid your dues. They also pumped cash into poor communities and employed thousands of people as drivers, bartenders, and construction workers. But this order came at a massive price: fear, corruption, suppressed competition, and long-term economic damage. It was an order built entirely on intimidation, not community. Despite their brutal reality, the media turned these criminals into cultural icons. Starting in the 1970s, movies like The Godfather, Goodfellas, and Donnie Brasco romanticized the life. Real-life figures like Carlo Gambino and Paul Castellano became legends, but no one mastered the art of public image like John Gotti, the Dapper Don. He dressed sharp, lived lavishly, and spoke in code. He turned mobsters into celebrities. He loved the camera, and for a while it seemed to love him back. But this fame, this desire to be seen, would ultimately become one of the biggest nails in the Mafia's coffin. The bloodiest of these wars took place between the 70s and 92nd. The Bonanno Civil War in the early 80s was a gruesome internal conflict fueled by betrayal and FBI infiltration. The Colombo family wars in the early 90s were even more public, with gunfights erupting on the streets of New York, sometimes killing innocent bystanders. But the most infamous moment was the 1985 assassination of Gambino family boss Paul Castellano. He was gunned down outside a steakhouse in Manhattan on the orders of his ambitious subordinate John Gotti. This wasn't just a hit. It was a public execution that shocked the nation. The deadliest outcome of these wars wasn't just the body count. It was the complete collapse of secrecy, the one thing the Mafia needed to survive. Imagine the pressure inside these families. It was a life of constant strain. Wives were often kept in the dark by design. Children lived double lives, knowing their fathers were respected in the neighborhood but feared for reasons they couldn't discuss. Sons were pressured to follow their fathers into the life, while daughters were sometimes used as social shields, their marriages arranged to form alliances. By the 1990s, this foundation of family loyalty had started to crack. Many children rejected their parents' world. Fear began to replace pride, and the sacred code of silence was about to be shattered. And that's when law enforcement found its ultimate weapon. The RICO Act, passed in 1970, the Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, was a death sentence for the Mafia. For the first time, prosecutors could charge a boss for crimes they ordered but didn't commit themselves. They could use a pattern of criminal behavior as evidence to take down an entire organization. Combined with sophisticated wiretaps and bugs placed in cars, social clubs, and homes, the FBI could finally listen in on the mob's deepest secrets. But the real killer blow came from informants. High-ranking members like Sammy the Bull Gravano, who helped put his own boss, John Gotti, away for life. Once The code of silence was broken on such a massive scale, it could never be restored. Now let's address a common conspiracy theory. Did the CIA benefit from the mob wars? The history here is complicated. During World War II, US intelligence did briefly cooperate with mob figures to protect American ports and counter communist influence in Italy. It was a devil's bargain made in a time of crisis. However, by the 1970s and 82nd, the era of the mob wars, the CIA was not secretly pulling strings or benefiting from the chaos. The early alliances had long-term consequences, indirectly shaping power structures, but they weren't partners. The idea that the CIA was a puppet master during the mob wars is a myth. So what was the deadliest outcome of the mob wars? It wasn't the hundreds of murders, it was the fact that the Mafia destroyed itself. Their own violence attracted massive media and law enforcement attention. Their public feuds and flashy lifestyles killed the secrecy they needed to operate. The constant internal warfare made it easier for the FBI to flip insiders, turning soldier against boss. They wrote their own playbook for destruction, and law enforcement simply read it back to them. By the early 2000s, the powerful families of the past were decimated, their leaders imprisoned, and their power shattered into 1,000 tiny pieces. In the end, who really benefited from all this? First, law enforcement. The war on the mob created legendary careers for prosecutors and greatly expanded federal authority. Second, legitimate corporations. They moved in to take over the unions, construction contracts, and waste management industries that the mob once controlled. Politicians could also claim victory, projecting a cleaner image, even if corruption itself never truly vanished. And of course, Hollywood and the media got a bottomless well of stories that continue to fascinate us to this day. The mob gained cultural immortality, but lost everything else: their power, their mystique, and their control. The final truth is this: the mob wars were not glamorous. They were a slow, agonizing collapse disguised as a show of force. The Italian-American Mafia once ruled entire cities from the shadows, but when their wars spilled into the light, the shadows and their empire disappeared for good. Thanks for watching. If you found this story fascinating, be sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives into history. See you next time.